Hello. We're gonna just get right to this. I'm gonna spit it at you, and you're gonna swallow it. So essentially, we've been like on 4 days of deliberation for Kyle Rittenhouse's trial, and I think I've given up on hope as to whether or not, there's gonna be any justice achieved from this. I don't think so. Regardless of whether or not Kyle Rittenhouse is proven guilty or innocent, or if Kyle Rittenhouse has those charges sticking to him, I don't believe for even a second that anything's going to change. Let's take a look at what's happening right now. We look at the courthouse itself is literally being called like the corner of America right now, which is really fucking weird. Like to say like there's a whole corner of America just kind of like watching one particular spot in Wisconsin of all places, and it's because of an 18-year-old boy that it's one of those things where we talk about how when someone is being groomed, they're raised a certain way. They're raised a certain way to do something later in life. And that's why I continue to use the word groom, because I believe that Kyle Rittenhouse was groomed by the state. The state groomed Kyle Rittenhouse in the same sense that a pedophile would groom an underage child for favors later in life. I've made that statement before in a previous video. So why do I say this? Well, we look at the courthouse now, and there are like a bunch of fucking like reactionary chudhead McGee's literally surrounding the place with firearm and shit. And to me, like that it's not safe. And I think people in the area are aware of that. People in the area are aware that the place is not safe right now. Kenosha is not safe. They are literally closing down schools in that area, which is the opposite of what those anti-vaxxers want. They want the schools to be open so that way their children can get sick with the coronavirus and systemically die, like a genocide or something like that. Anyway, so they're closed down and they're forced to go virtual because of these people that are gathering around the courthouse. Because they fear that there's going to be another mass shooting. They fear that there's going to be another fucking riot. I'm just here thinking because I'm hearing people say, well, what if there's another uprising? What if there's another riot? It's so funny because isn't that what Kyle Rittenhouse allegedly, crossed the border and illegally obtained a firearm under the age of 18 to prevent was violence and destruction of property and the killing of people, right? Allegedly, kind of like putting myself in his shoes for a second. It just seems redundant even that what Kyle Rittenhouse did, trying to be some fucking goddamn Dick Tracy or whatever the fuck he thought he was being, hopping the border, which is ironic considering how those people view immigration, but that's besides the point. They're all settler pieces of shit, myself included. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that he actually did not achieve what he meant to do, at least in his mind. He meant to prevent protesting. He meant to stop protesting. Again, giving him the benefit of the doubt. And here we are. Today there are fights over this shit. He's perpetuating this. The focus and attention on this man, on this little individual, on this boy, young boy, it was counterintuitive to exactly what he was trying to do. He didn't stop protests. He didn't single-handedly stop Antifa. Antifa is not going away. You kill me, you kill my friends, there's still thousands of us. We're all anti-fascists. Antifa is an idea, it's an ideology, it is a concept that is reactionary to fascism. There's no Antifa organization. There's no, comparison that you could make to the Islamic State. where it's just like a centralized fucking individual organization. Antifa is on a broad spectrum of organizations and ideologies that that coincide with it. So here's Kyle Rittenhouse doing like a fucking like goddamn Call of Duty bullshit. You know, he's trying to be like Master Chief or whatever because he played Master Chief Halo 2 when it came out in November 9, 2004. You know, at the age of 1 or whatever the fuck he was doing. But my point here, primarily speaking, is that Rittenhouse didn't do jack shit. He didn't save anyone. In fact, he killed people and injured one. The person that he injured was a fucking paramedic. Like, he had EMT training. Like, okay, so let's compare that to some other cases. So yesterday, specifically yesterday, as in November 18, 2021, because today is the 19th, Julius Jones, for killing an insurance executive. That's one person, right? A black man killing one person, an insurance executive, was almost executed yesterday. He was set to be executed yesterday. And the judge, and the Oklahoma governor, they gave him clemency. So he now serves a life in prison. So to me, that rings a bunch of questions. If Julius Jones here is sentenced to jail, to prison for his whole life and or a death sentence, hypothetically speaking, then what does that tell us about what Kyle Rittenhouse's case is like? It's a fucking circus show, right? It's a fucking circus show, and it's meant to get ratings. It's meant to get viewership. That's what it's meant to do. I'm always sitting here like, you know, like in complete disbelief and cognitive dissonance when I watch these people, like specifically the judge and the jury and other members of the trial. They always say that we can't be political in this point in this trial. We gotta divorce ourselves from political bias. We gotta look at this objectively under the law. And honestly, you can't do that. Like, no, everything's political. Like, that's the same as like my grandpa trying to say, don't make music political. Music's been political since the beginning of fucking music. Like, you know, people like when it was like the fucking Renaissance, and before that even during the Christian imperialist and Spanish Inquisition and all that shit, like people wrote music for their rulers, for their master. They did paintings for their masters. Is that not political? It can't just be apolitical just because it adheres to the status quo. This trial is adhering to the status quo. It is not revolutionary, and it is counterintuitive to the safety of people, especially to the children and families of Kenosha, Wisconsin. It is absolutely detrimental. And then you're telling me that this man was, Julius Jones, was sentenced to life in prison, like barely, almost getting executed the day that Kyle Rittenhouse was on his third day of deliberation. Like, of course, they waited 20 years. This guy did this crime in 1999, and we're talking about a fucking insurance executive here, not someone who is a fucking paramedic who has EMT training. We're not talking about someone who actually does good for the world. We're talking about someone who banks on the private ownership of the means of production. An insurance executive. An insurance executive, let me just be clear, like, we don't need them. Like, I say we need Medicare for all. People need Medicare, especially during a fucking pandemic like this one. And then on top of that, we look at, excuse me, we look at what happened in Florida earlier this year, around October 16, 2021. A Florida anarchist is going to spend years in prison for online posts about January 6th riot. So the post was in question that he is being prosecuted for is about how there is a lot of fascist violence going on. You know, a lot of armed fascists with firearm willing to pull the trigger and not use, you know, fucking firearm safety. I've seen these fucking chuds at protests, and like they have like firearms that they got from their daddy when they were in Vietnam or Iraq, and yet they don't know how to hold it properly. They don't know how to turn the safety on. They don't know how to, like, you know, point the gun away. They don't know the zeroth rule of firearm. Assume that it's loaded, you know. That's why you get those people just shooting shit, like, and popping off, because they don't know how to hold firearm, right? So we look at this Daniel Baker, who is the Florida anarchist that is being sentenced to prison here, and he mentions this, and he further explains that we're looking at a necessity to bear arms. Not for action superhero bullshit like Kyle Rittenhouse did, of course. We're talking about the defense of marginalized people. Because let's put it this way, you got the police, and then you got fascists, and they both have guns. And the fascists are there to hurt you. Like, by design, that's what they do. They're there to hurt you. I know there's like a different array of fascists, and they'll probably say, oh, you call anyone a Nazi. Like, first of all, no, I'm not calling them Nazis, but Nazis are among them. Like, you're gonna look at the Proud Boys and say they don't inhibit, like, qualities of fascism? Like, you're gonna look at the Patriot, like, Front and say that they don't, like, inhibit qualities of fascism? Like, you're gonna be really that intellectually dishonest about the, like, century-long study of what fascism is and how to identify it? Bullshit. Fucking bullshit. So then we have this gauge of understanding what fascism is, and we have these two entities, the police and the fascists with firearms. And the police, what they'll do is ask politely to keep the firearms away for optics reason, you know, because it'll look bad if you just do everything gun-ho. But then when there's, like, leftist protesters, sometimes, well, let's just be real here, when they're unarmed, they get arrested, they get shot at. Like, honestly, the only time the state doesn't mess with leftists is when they are armed. Like, and of course, leftists, they don't have the intention of going on, like, these big-ass fucking goddamn Call of Duty mass shootings that Kyle Rittenhouse and his goddamn buddies do. Like, comparatively, especially to, let's say, right-wing terrorism or even Islamic terrorism, which is dwarfed by right-wing terrorism. And even police killings, you know, just exceed that measure. So it's just like, leftist terrorism is barely a thing anymore, like, or even at all. Like, the extent of what I would consider to be leftist terrorism would be like Willem von Stronsen or the Animal Liberation Front. But even then, it's just like, I'm talking about, like, recent leftist terrorism. And even then, it's just like, you gotta look at the motive behind that, the reasoning, the context. Not just say that, like, these guys are terrorists, therefore they are bad. Terrorism is thrown around kind of loosely these days. I think we're all starting to realize it. You know, we're starting to realize that one person is not a terrorist because of their religious beliefs. You know, we don't just call Muslims terrorists just because they're Muslim. You know, if you're a Muslim and you're qualifiably a terrorist, then you have to have some sort of, like, you know, Islamic nationalist ideology that propels you to use violence for that goal. And that's really what terrorism is. So, do we call Kyle Rittenhouse a terrorist and a murderer? I think that's qualifiable. But I'm just saying, like, it doesn't really matter if he's proven innocent or guilty at this point. There's still going to be an uprising, and there's still going to be a riot. There's nothing that I can personally do about that. I'm not in Wisconsin at all. Like, there's nothing I can do to stop that. There's gonna be a shooting, there's gonna be riots. Like, that's not something that I have any say or anything about. Like, I'm not able to stop that. I'm not able to prevent that, and I'm not even able to incite that. Nor do I really want to. I'm concerned about the people in Kenosha who are having to be locked down because of this shit. Because of this trial that Kyle Rittenhouse is participating in for his own, like, life. And the fact of the matter is that the neighborhood is now more unsafe than it was before. And that's alarming. Those are some serious fucking red flags right there. And not the kind of red flags that you see in a communist revolution. Like, those are some alarm bells, like, that you should be aware of. Like, because they're gonna keep doing this. Like, Kyle Rittenhouse is not gonna be a standalone motherfucking McGee. Matt Gaetz is already fucking jacking off to a picture saying that maybe he can work for him. Like, holy shit. It's atrocious. I don't want there to be, like, another fucking mass shooting. I don't want there to be mass shootings. I'm not for gun control, of course. And I'm not even sure how I feel about background checks either. But at the same time, we have to understand that those who have firearms are those who have the ability to purchase firearms. Or they have connections to a fascist of some sort, like, you know, the Kenosha Guard, for Kyle Rittenhouse's case. You know, we're talking about, like, you know, people who have family members with firearms. You look at Santa Clarita, and, you know, the police, they look into, you know, the person who shot up Saugus High School, and, you know, they can't seem to find a motive for some weird reason. Apparently his dad had, like, you know, pieces of a firearm, and it was, you know, put together by either him or his son, and that was the gun that he ended up using, right? But it's just like, they don't teach firearm safety in school, which I think is important, among other things that they should be teaching in school, like setting boundaries, maintaining relationships, learning about the value of consent, and things like that. And they don't teach firearm training, and that's alarming, because if there's no education that is readily available for those who are going to grow up to be adults and to own a firearm, potentially, then I think that's a huge safety concern. That's like a public safety issue. That people are not understanding what a firearm is, that it's not a fucking toy, that you don't go fucking goddamn Hopalong Cassidy on, like, you know, whoever you hate, for fuck's sake. Holy shit. I'm just sitting here just in complete disbelief. Like, not necessarily in shock, but in complete disbelief that this Kyle Rittenhouse shit was literally a distraction from the fact that an officer tried to kill Jacob Blake on flimsy fucking accusations, no less. I mean, as far as I'm aware, Jacob Blake's still alive, all the power to him. But the fact that, like, this uprising that took place in Kenosha a year ago, you know, in the late part of August, you know, that was because an officer attempted to murder a black man. And that's not acceptable. Like, that's super not acceptable that there's a whole media spin, you know, towards Kyle Rittenhouse, a goddamn mass shooter who was groomed by the state and the police state for their own personal political gain. You can't say this is not political. This is all, in every sense of the word, political. Whether there is a verdict or not, a mistrial, or Kyle is innocent or guilty, there's going to be violence in Kenosha. The state knows this. They got 500 National Guards, at least last time I checked, down there, like ready to do their own little mass shooting. You know, just like ready to do Call of Duty bullshit down there. Like, you think they don't know what they're doing is harming the community? You think the state doesn't understand that they are hurting the community themselves? Really, the only reason why they're there is to protect those who have firearms. Like, and they're gonna be there to stop counter protesters. Some people in the comments will say, well, they arrested some far right fascists in Kenosha. Okay, that doesn't solve the systemic problem of fascism or the grooming of children who will become fascists later in life. Like, it's just one of those things where it's just like, I'm just perplexed, rather, because, like, you know, when I was young, you know, I had my DARE program officer Turpin, from the Burbank Police Department, and he was like, you know, if you want to join a gang, you gotta talk to these crooks, these thugs, and these thugs are gonna beat you up, you know, and then you'll be part of the gang. You gotta do some other things to become initiated into them. And then, you know, if you want to leave the gang, you're going to get your ass kicked even harder, you know, and they'll try to kill you even. That was the words of the officer, trying to scare us and scaremonger us into being afraid of gang violence. And of course, gang violence is not something to laugh at here. It's nothing to shrug off. But of course, he was talking about black gangs, you know. He was definitely not talking about the Proud Boys, who have the same procedure for joining them. Getting your ass kicked until you list 5 fucking brands of cereal. Like, and just the way they behave with their colors and their symbols, which was also something that Officer Turpin had expressed to me in the past. Of course, he was not talking about white nationalist gangs. He was not talking about Western chauvinism gangs. You know, he was not talking about, you know, fucking, you know, I believe women owe me sex gangs. For fuck's sake. I don't know, like, this whole Western civilization, Western tradition shit, I think it's a lost cause, guys. Like, you guys should maybe reconsider. Maybe motherfucking reconsider your motives. Like, what you are fighting for. Like, you hate Joe Biden? Personally, me, I can give you millions of more reasons to hate Joe Biden. I hate Joe Biden probably more than you do. And I'm saying that to Proud Boys and fascists and reactionaries and traditionalist fucking goons. Like, seriously, you hate liberals so much. Like, I can give you better reasons to hate liberals. And yet, you still pull this shit. You still go on these goddamn little mass shootings. You write your little fucking manifestos and, you know, shoot up black churches and shit. And then the police come around and they take you to Burger King. That's really what happened when they got Dylan Roof. I'm just sitting here like, if the state truly does not understand that fascism is a public health crisis, not just something to be like swept under the rug and called terrorist, but like a genuine health crisis, then yeah, the state should be abolished. It's not something that should exist. It's a safety hazard. It's a community safety hazard that we have to fucking just sit here and worry about people fucking organizing in our neighborhood to kill us, to kill people. Like, I remember when like a year ago, I lived in Los Angeles. I lived in Crenshaw and Westlake and all these different places. And there was like, you know, it was a largely black neighborhood. And it's weird because like, I was taught all my life that, you know, these kinds of neighborhoods, that they would say, are dangerous and there's a lot of crime. You can get yourself killed there. And that was while I was in a suburb at the time when they were telling me this. Like, you know, because I was kind of almost even sheltered to some degree my whole life. But it's just like, I remember having like a gun pulled on me at least twice when I was living in the suburbs. When I was living in like, you know, those neighborhoods, that never happened. Like, I did hear gunshots outside, but every time I heard them, I heard on the news there was another police killing, an extrajudicial murder, or like police officers shooting someone or something, because they don't have fucking firearm safety training apparently. You know, not to mention that LA gangs are largely within the police. Look up executioners and banditos and those fucking Peckerwood gangs and shit. They're all in the police. You're like, really? If you're worried about gangs, look at the police in LA. Just Google LASD gangs. You'll see what I mean. But like when I was in like, you know, like black neighborhoods with people of color, like that never happened. Actually, a lot of the time, since I was transitioning at the time, a lot of them complimented the way I look. A lot of them even empowered me to be myself. A lot of them gave me like these really warm like conversations about how like, you know, about their own struggles, and you know, like we could relate on that. We found like we were like eye to eye with that shit. I think the only time something happened that was questionable or dangerous was when someone was following me home. But that's about it. Like, I never saw that person again, and they didn't try to get me further. So, like, I don't know. Being followed home, while that is dangerous and can lead to several dangerous things down the line, it's not as dangerous as having a fucking gun pointed to your head twice in the suburbs. And you think that these black neighborhoods are gang territory? For fuck's sake, no. Like a lot of these mass shooters, they get their firearm legally. Just because it's legal doesn't mean it's acceptable. And I made a video about legality versus morality. I'm just sitting here in complete disbelief that they're really like acting like they're shocked. Like, they're not shocked. They know that this is gonna happen. Like I said, they got the National Guards there. They know that there's going to be more violence. They'll try to see this in like a centrist light, that left-wing radicals are going against fascists. And it's just like, that's the failure of the state. They don't contextualize it. In fact, actually, when they contextualize it, they only do that for their own benefit. So it's horseshit. It's a horseshit claim to make that the state is impartial. The state's not impartial. Like, if we look at history, the history of imperialism in the U.S. empire, the U.S. empire is not impartial. Like, they definitely picked a side. And I think to make an accusation that, you know, we're in a communist utopia because Joseph Biden is president is baseless. Absolutely fucking baseless. And it further ignores the problem that we face in our day-to-day lives, being the constant threat of another fucking mass shooting. I'm done, bye. Fuck off, Kyle.